we're going to need some extra security for this fight. I got to be honest. I don't know if I trust those two enough to put them together before the fight, because I think they might start fighting. They seem to hate each other and despise each other. Sean Strickland went and jumped the line with a victory. Watching him against Fluffy, do we believe that he can compete against KHAMZAT CHIMAEV? I have heard stories out of the CHIMAEV camp that CHIMAEV is training so hard and putting it on guys, elite level guys, like nothing you've ever seen before. I have heard KHAMZAT CHIMAEV wants people to go so hard with him to try to beat him and submit him and do. He's paying him. He doesn't care. KHAMZAT's putting a bounty on himself.
This man fled his country. He went to Sweden. He had a great life. But this man goes back to Chechnya, sucks off a dictator, sucks him off, lets his son beat him up. And the leash got too tight. Too many G-Wagons. And when it came down to go a little deeper and suck a little more, this little fucking pussy ran to somewhere in the Middle East. And then he goes and sells a Bitcoin scam. CHIMAEV can fight, but sir, you are not a fucking man, little Chechen whore.
KHAMZAT versus Strickland. I'm very interested in that fight. Strickland is a nightmare standing up. What he did to Fluffy Hernandez, I was like, holy shit.
But he made Fluffy fight. You know, he fights at a slower pace. He has his own pace in there, and he kind of forces the other guy to fight. His opponent has to fight this pace with him. The best chance is to blitz him, do unorthodox things, because he wants to jab, circle.
His defense is extraordinary. Think about how much that guy spars. It's a giant part of his training, because his cardio is almost entirely based on sparring. I thought Fluffy was going to be a problem. Strickland made it look like he just did not belong in there.
Marvov, I know Marvov beat Kyle Bohayo, but when you look at it, Strickland's already beat Marvov. Yeah, it was a while ago, but a win's a win. And he just put a beat down and a stoppage on Fluffy, right? Marvov beat Kyle Bohayo by decision. And we all know this sport's about what have you done for me lately. There is a backstory between CHIMAEV and Sean Strickland. They have trained with one another. There's a bit of shit talk. There's going to be bad blood. We know that the lead up to the fight will be goddamn insane, right? CHIMAEV doesn't hold back. He talks shit, but in a kind of reserved way, but like he truly believes in himself. And Sean Strickland is just going to go on the full offensive. We know that. We know that. He's going to be talking some crazy shit. Dana even joked about it on the little show that we did there. He said they're going to need extra security for that fight, during the fight week, leading up to the fight, after the fight, in the fight. It's going to be a mad one because Sean Strickland doesn't hold back. And you know what? Even if you don't like the shit that he says, you have to appreciate the entertainment value that he brings to the table. And then on top of that, the performances inside the octagon. That one against Fluffy, that was a different shot.
And against CHIMAEV, we've seen him when he has faced adversity. And while he has been able to pass those tests, it still does seem to fatigue him and confuse him when he is in those situations because he's so used to being the hammer and not the nail. Again, I think that from a matchup standpoint, it's going to be really interesting to see, really, like I said, the first couple of minutes of this fight to see if CHIMAEV is able to implement his game plan. Because if not, I think it's going to be a really interesting fight and a fight that Sean Strickland can win despite the long odds.
Yeah. I mean, there's a possibility KHAMZAT just goes out there, takes him down and dominates him, right? So we're going to see where he's at. But the other thing with Sean Strickland is he's a pretty big dude. We know KHAMZAT sort of with cardio-wise, even with DDP towards the end, he was pretty tired. And Sean Strickland's cardio is through the roof, right? Like he's go. And he's going to, if you're standing with him, he's going to take up that octagon. He's going to push you back. He's so tiring to fight against when it comes to everybody in the division, right? It's just hard to fight him. So if it's really going to test KHAMZAT's cardio, if it's standing for a couple of rounds even, to see where he's at. I feel like it's going to answer a few questions for us if Sean can stop these.
KHAMZAT CHIMAEV versus Sean Strickland has become the kind of matchup that keeps dividing people every time it gets discussed. You can listen to 10 different opinions and walk away with 10 different predictions. Some people look at KHAMZAT's wrestling and think the answer is right in front of everyone. Others watch Sean Strickland, look at his pressure, his durability, and the way he keeps dragging opponents into his sort of fight, and they think this is far less obvious than it seems. That split is exactly why this fight keeps getting so much attention. prediction. There is no clean agreement on how this one unfolds. One group believes KHAMZAT's grappling is simply too much, too fast, and too dangerous for Sean to deal with. Another group believes Strickland can survive the early trouble, stretch the fight out, and start forcing a completely different pace. That is what keeps this matchup interesting. It is not one of those fights where fans all point in the same direction. It keeps pulling people both ways. A big reason for that is style. KHAMZAT CHIMAEV brings a kind of pressure that can change a fight in an instant. He closes distance fast, attacks hard, and makes opponents deal with wrestling exchanges that feel exhausting even when they do survive them. Sean Strickland operates in a different way. He does not need chaos to win. He keeps moving forward, stays composed, and makes the other man fight longer than they want to. He likes rhythm, repetition, and steady pressure that slowly takes over the fight. When you put those two styles together, the result becomes very hard to read. That is where the real question starts. Can KHAMZAT keep forcing the fight where he wants it, or can Sean keep dragging it back into open space and a slower kind of battle? That is the heart of this matchup. It is not only about who has the better skill in one area, it is about whose style starts taking over once the fight settles down, and both men have to adjust on the fly. There is also the fact that people have seen KHAMZAT deal with hard moments before. He is still one of the most dangerous names in the sport, and no one is questioning that. But once a fighter has faced resistance, the conversation changes. Fans start asking tougher questions. What happens if the first attack does not finish the job? What happens if the opponent keeps getting back up? What happens when the pace starts demanding more than just early explosiveness? That is part of why this fight has so many people talking. The questions around it feel real. Sean O'Malley looked at this matchup from the grappling angle and focused on the biggest difference he sees between these two men. His point was that Sean Strickland may have decent defensive ability, and people may say he can grapple, but that is not the same as dealing with somebody like KHAMZAT CHIMAEV when that pressure keeps coming over and over again. That kind of test is different. It is heavier, more demanding, and much harder to survive when there is no time to reset. O'Malley was not saying Strickland has no chance in those situations. What he was really getting at is that there is a difference between handling basic grappling exchanges and handling a fighter who can keep turning every moment into a wrestling problem. That is what makes KHAMZAT such a tough matchup. He does not just look for one opening and leave it there. He keeps pushing, keeps forcing reactions, and keeps making the other man work in ways that can empty the gas tank. That is where O'Malley raised a point that makes this fight more complicated than a simple early prediction. He questioned whether KHAMZAT can keep that same level of pressure going for a full fight, especially if Sean Strickland keeps standing back up. That part matters more than people sometimes admit. Getting a takedown once is one thing, getting another is harder. Getting another after that, when the opponent is still resisting and still finding a way back to his feet, starts costing even more. That repeated effort can drain a fighter quickly. The first shot may come with speed and power. The second might still look sharp. By the time you're forcing that same exchange again and again, the work begins to add up. Wrestling pressure is effective, but it is expensive. Every entry, every drive, every scramble, every reset takes something out of you. O'Malley clearly sees that as a major factor in this fight, especially if Sean Strickland stays calm enough to keep making KHAMZAT repeat the process. And that is why his take did not sound like a simple one-sided prediction. He sees the grappling edge for KHAMZAT, no question, but he also sees the possible downside if the fight becomes a long test instead of a fast takeover. Sean Strickland is not the kind of fighter who panics easily. He is the kind of fighter who keeps showing up in the same way, minute after minute. And if he can turn every early success for KHAMZAT into more work, the whole shape of the fight can start changing. O'Malley also gave a very clear picture of what he thinks this fight might look like if it follows a certain path. In his view, the early rounds could belong to KHAMZAT CHIMAEV. That means control, damage, and the kind of top pressure that makes it hard for the other man to get comfortable. This part of the prediction is easy to understand. KHAMZAT has built his name on fast pressure and immediate danger, and if he gets the kind of start he wants, the first part of the fight could look rough for Sean Strickland. That early success could come from KHAMZAT getting to his shots quickly, forcing Sean to defend right away, and making him spend energy in places he does not want to spend it. If that happens, the opening rounds may strongly favor KHAMZAT. He has the style to create that kind of momentum, and once he starts controlling position, he can make even a good fighter look stuck. That is what makes his pressure so serious. It is not only about taking someone down, it is about taking away their comfort and making them fight at your pace. But O'Malley did not stop the breakdown there. He said the later rounds are where the fight could start shifting, especially if Sean Strickland begins reading the takedown attempts more clearly and starts defending them better. That is a very important detail. Fights like this are often decided by adjustments. A fighter might struggle badly at the start, then slowly figure out the timing, the entry, and the space needed to make those same attacks harder to land cleanly. Once that starts happening, even was the entire feel of the fight can change. If the pace slows and the wrestling threat becomes less constant, O'Malley sees a version of the fight where Strickland starts turning it into more of a striking battle. That would be a better situation for Sean. He likes operating at a measured pace, staying in front of his opponent and forcing them to work through long stretches on the feet. He does not need wild exchanges to gain control. He needs time, reads, and enough space to start imposing his own rhythm. That is why O'Malley's breakdown stands out. He is not just saying KHAMZAT dominates or Strickland rallies. He is laying out a fight that may change shape as it goes. KHAMZAT could come out hard, build control early, and make it look like the fight is leaning his way. Then, if Sean keeps surviving and refuses to stay down, the work required to hold that advantage may start building up. Once fatigue enters the picture, the same attacks may not come as cleanly, and that can open the door for the other man. O'Malley compared it to those situations where an elite grappler comes in and suddenly makes a very good fighter look like he has no answers. Everyone has seen fights like that. A skilled fighter gets put in a bad style matchup, and suddenly he looks frozen because every exchange is happening on the other guy's terms. That comparison tells you how dangerous O'Malley thinks KHAMZAT can be early. When KHAMZAT gets rolling, he can make top-level fighters look like they are stuck in place. Even with that in mind, O'Malley still was not completely sold on the idea that it stays easy for KHAMZAT from start to finish. That is what makes his take more balanced than a lot of the loud reactions online. He clearly sees KHAMZAT getting off to a strong start, and maybe a very strong one, but he also sees the chance for Strickland to shift the fight once the pace changes and the shots become easier to read. In a matchup like this, that possibility matters a lot. That leaves people with the biggest question of all. If KHAMZAT dominates the early rounds, is that enough to carry him the whole way, or does that only set up a tougher second half of the fight? If Sean Strickland keeps getting back to his feet and starts forcing more striking exchanges, does the momentum begin turning in his direction? Those are the details people keep arguing over, and that is exactly why this matchup keeps feeling so hard to predict. That is why this fight has created so many split opinions across the sport. It is not a simple matchup, and it probably will not be decided by one easy idea. KHAMZAT CHIMAEV has the pressure to break a fight open very quickly. Sean Strickland has the kind of style that can keep dragging an opponent into deeper water and make every minute feel longer. Both things can be true at the same time, and that is what makes this such a fascinating fight. A single moment could change everything here. One takedown, one scramble, one successful stand-up, one failed shot, or one round where the pace begins to slow could end up shaping the rest of the fight. That is why people keep going back and forth. There are real arguments on both sides, and both fighters have clear paths to taking control. Ian, drop your prediction in the comments and let us know who you think wins this fight, because this is one of those matchups where a lot of people may end up getting surprised. And before you go, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for more fight breakdowns.